Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Spoilers, the movie review show where we talk as if you've seen the movie with us. We are going to get into spoilers into this, so if you have not seen X-Men Days of Future Past, just add this video to your favorites list, or if you don't care about spoilers, go ahead and watch anyway. But we are talking about the new X-Men film, X-Men Days of Future Past, which, Amy Rose has seen like a week or two ago. The rest of us saw it in the last last 48 hours or so. And we're going to talk about this film. Once again, let me reiterate this. We are going to go full-blown into the movie. We're going to talk and review this film as if you saw it with us. So that means we're assuming you've seen the film. So we're going to get into spoilers and things like that. So you've been warned. I'm going to introduce now the people who are going to be joining me for this review. Sitting right beside me, of course, is Chris Lee Kennedy.
Hello.
Beside her is Christian Harloff.
What's up?
Amy Rose Eisenbach.
Hey, hey.
And, of course, Mr. John Schnepp.
Boo.
I love that Mr. T Cylon shirt, by the way.
I actually drew this as my own.
I know.
Nice.
I remember you drew that. That is very awesome. All right. Enough of that nonsense. I was excited, not just about another X-Men film, but I was excited because Bryan Singer was returning to X-Men. To me, the first two X-Men films, now this is just me, I know other people have other opinions, that's cool. But for me, the reason I was excited is because X-Men 1 and X-Men 2 are the best of the franchise so far. And X-Men 2 to me is still in my top 2 or 3 best comic book movies of all time. I get really excited by this film. So seeing him coming back to it excited me just right off the bat. So we're going to talk about our positives, we're going to talk about the negatives, we're going to talk about our overall impressions and give a score out of 10. And Amy Rose, since you saw the film first, I know you've been bursting at the bubble talking about it, let's start with you. Let's start with the positives of X-Men Days of Future Past.
Okay, I'm so glad I can finally talk about this because, as you know, I covered it. Thank you again.
Yes.
And, I'm an X-Men addict. This is the franchise that I grew up with that always got me. I always secretly wanted powers to emerge in my heart. And this film, the storyline of Days of Future Past is so complicated, and there's so much room for error, and it was just so seamlessly done. And basically Singer came back and said, forget Ratner's film, forget this, First Class, I'll show you what's up, because that was my favorite film up to this point of the X-Men franchise, and the character moments were fantastic. Having both sets of Professor X and Magneto on the screen at one time was ridiculous, and the visual effects were fantastic. Everything about this film completely raised the bar, and the continuity factor, I was a little worried what they were going to do, since there's so many things that they had to kind of keep, and they just nailed it. They completely nailed it. I thought that James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender have never been better, and Jennifer Lawrence, finally, it's the mystique I wanted to see. The pausing and very calculated, and just you see the whole torment. That's why this character is so fascinating to me. So I just thought the arcs were fantastic. The effects, Peter Dinklage, stop it. Stop it. He's so wonderful. So the character moments, visuals, everything, the plot, the dialogue.
One thing about
amazing.
Peter Dinklage, because I know I'll forget this a little bit later. One of the things I loved about Peter Dinklage in this film and about the film and how they treated the character, not one mention of the fact that he was a midget. Not one mention of the fact that he's short.
Yeah.
There might have been one comment about who is it? It's the shorter guy. Maybe there was one of those. They didn't create a dwarf character and thought, let's get Peter Dinklage. No. They just had this great character, said, who's a great actor that can play it? And they went and got Peter Dinklage to do it. And I loved that.
And he was a very layered villain. He wasn't just
excellent.
that's what he did.
Because in his head, he's not evil. He thinks he's doing something great for the world.
Yeah.
Anyway, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, I will go on.
Fair one. I'm probably going to interrupt everybody because I want to talk about the movie so bad.
And now you get it. I was exploding, and all our fans were like, whoa, she's really excited. Well, see this and tell me that you're not a believer. I'm an X-Men addict, but beyond that, this movie is just an amazing movie. You don't have to know the universe. The ensemble is reason enough to freak out because the talent that they got for this. And Bryan Singer, his direction, it was just seamless. The glass falling, the details. Quicksilver stole the movie.
Okay, that scene with Quicksilver. I turned to Schnepp and Dennis.
One?
I know,
Which
right?
one?
But the scene.
scene.
I turned to Schnepp and Dennis. I said, this scene is extremely reminiscent to me of the Nightcrawler opening scene of X-Men 2.
Yes.
Except better.
And when the first images came out, we're like, oh goodness, but he crushed it.
He looked terrible.
That's how he's supposed to be in the comics.
Yeah.
He's bored because everything's moving so much slower than him. He's super sarcastic. He likes to joke around. I must cuss there. Yes, I stopped it. So yeah, everything about this, I'm sure we'll go into more detail, but I think they crushed it. It floored me. It made me so happy. And yeah, the negatives are going to be really hard for me. I might pass in that section.
Okay, you know what? I've decided I'm going to go next because I don't want to keep interrupting everybody. So because I'm like bursting at the seams about this. Okay,
Yes.
story. I'm going to start with some things you
Yeah.
touched on. Story. I'm going to say this. I am not ready to go out on a lim and say this is the best comic book movie I've ever seen. I'm not ready to say that. But I will say this. This is some of the best storytelling
So good.
I've seen in any comic book movie. And I'm throwing the Dark Knight films in there as well. Because up until now, if you were to ask me what is the best storytelling in a comic book movie you've ever seen, I would say The Dark Knight.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
though it's not my overall favorite comic book film. X-Men Days of Future Past is going to give that a real run for its money because it is such a complex story.
So complex.
The way Singer seamlessly jumps back and forth between the different time eras. Not only that, there is not an ounce of fat on this movie. Like at 2 hours and 12 minutes, you would think there would be some scenes, you think, they could have cut that. No. Bryan Singer cut this thing down to as lean as it possibly could. There's not a wasted second of screen time in this film. Everything has this terrific pace, so much stuff going on with so many characters. And, I told Schnepp going into the film, I said, I'm really afraid, like we see Bobby and, and Kitty, and we see them in the trailer. I'm afraid they're going to be there for 5 seconds, get killed and be gone.
Right.
Are they used a lot? No. But were they used effectively?
Very.
And better than I thought they would? Everybody
Yeah.
is. I mean, it's just crazy good. The Dinklage thing I already mentioned about that. James McAvoy. This is going to sound totally silly talking about a comic book film.
This is Oscar worthy.
This might be the best performance I've ever seen him give. And that includes, not Shame. What was the one he just did? Or
Filth.
Filth.
Whew.
Filth. He blew our minds
That
with
was a
Filth.
ride.
But I'm telling you, from his subtle humor in this to a guy in the midst of a comic book movie really hitting rock bottom and how that has destroyed his spirit and his soul. It was amazing.
He was incredible.
And you know what? Patrick Stewart said something incredible during your interview with him.
Yes.
He said, if anything, Patrick Stewart said this.
Yeah.
I wish I could go back and reshoot all the original X-Men movies now that I've seen James McAvoy and what he brings.
I mean, talk
Wow.
about a standing ovation in words.
I would be, if I was James McAvoy, I'd be crapping my pants.
Fetal position, crying in a corner.
Like, holy crap. Okay, visual effects, amazing.
Gorgeous.
Like Hugh Jackman. Okay, let's go to Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. And let's talk about this too. Why are they making Wolverine the lead and why is Mystique? Well, you know what? Story-wise, they made it completely rational.
It was perfect.
But why Wolverine had to be the main thing. But when it came down to the end, it's not like it was Wolverine who had to save the day. I thought that was wonderful the way they did that. And his performance, dear heavens, the body on that man.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking it.
Come on. He looks
ridiculous.
like a comic book superhero character. The little cameos, the fact that they put back in Rogue, even though she didn't have a line, it was perfect.
Jean Grey.
Jean Grey, the way Scott came back in.
Cyclops, yeah.
It was great because it wasn't just see Scott across the room, it's Wolverine reaching for her face.
Whoa.
Grabs her. Whoa, buddy. It's like perfect. Absolutely perfect. The way they use Stryker was wonderful, the way they used Stryker. The way they harkened back to the First Class stuff as Mystique is looking through the pictures of the morgue and the bodies. Azazel,
Angel. Yeah.
Emma Frost.
You see all of them in there, and it's actually the actors' likenesses and stuff like that. The Pain, I like the little throwback using Havoc was back there, although they still were avoiding he's supposed to be brothers with Scott, but I guess they're not going to touch on that. That's fine. I thought Beast was used incredibly.
Yeah.
He was wonderful. And of course, the Kelsey Grammer thing at the end. I was telling these guys off screen, I almost started throwing things around the theater. When I saw Kelsey Grammer as Beast, I'm like, yeah! Like, I wanted to swear, and it was so awesome. I'm going to think of about 45 other things as we go. I'm just going to take a
This
deep
could be a
breath.
3-hour spoilers.
And how cool were the Sentinels? And
Awesome.
Which ones of us weren't at least a little bit worried about
I was a
the
little
Sentinels?
worried.
I
Way
was
worried.
worried about
The
it.
JFK photos that they leaked earlier, I was like, okay, this could go either way.
And vacuum cleaners.
And by the way, the JFK,
JFK twist.
JFK moment when he's just like, because he was one of us. I was like,
Yeah.
Oh, I almost forgot. Gonna say this. My favorite scene in any comic book movie ever happened in this movie, and it was a scene we talked about this in the car coming home. Is a scene I've been waiting for ever since X-Men 1. It's a scene in the plane when Charles and Eric finally have that conversation.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
back and forth. You abandoned me. No,
Yeah.
you abandoned us.
Yeah.
And that whole, it
Powerful.
really brought to the surface the differences of ideology between the two. And I've always felt
Totally.
like Eric was a really misunderstood. He's not just a twirl his mustache
No.
villain. He's a guy who,
He's
in his heart of
political.
hearts,
Yeah.
he thinks he's doing the right thing. He thinks he's trying to save his kind. And, you know, oh my,
I know.
okay.
I know. Now you get it. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to take a breath here. Schnepp, let's jump over to you. Some of the things you liked about this particular movie.
I'll say this too, just as a preface. Like, I was coming into this movie like, Bryan Singer, why'd they bring him back? Matthew Vaughn did such a great job with First Class. I wasn't a big fan of the last few Bryan Singer films. I felt like, I felt it was a mistake. And I saw the first trailer. I was like, oh, that trailer looks good. But they can cut trailers nowadays where you can take,
Sure, yeah.
you could take something that's not so great and make
Last
it look amazing.
Last Airbender.
Spider-Man 2. And so I was a little reticent. I saw all the trailers. I was really excited. And this woman right over here was freaking out. It's incredible. I was like, oh, my God. She's saying it's great. I want it to be amazing. I think it's the best superhero film of this year. To me, it's...
So you see, I've been struggling with this. Because
Cap?
everybody knows how much I love
Yeah.
Cap 2. And I think it's too soon for me to make a declaration. But you're ready to say you liked it more than Cap 2.
I liked it way better than Captain America 2. And I loved Captain America 2. I still am feeling so happy of seeing, like, my body's exploding. Like, this movie is so great on so many levels. The action, just talking about just the action of we have these sequences where Colossus and Blink, and you saw those in the trailer.
So good.
And you're like, we were talking about that. That's going to be like 3 seconds. They're going to ruin that.
So epic.
Not only do you feel for those characters because they have to repeatedly fight, because it's a time travel movie. So you see them fight these creepy Sentinels several times. That it builds up emotionally, even though they don't have a lot of lines. They don't have a lot of scenes. That by the time of the end, when you see that everything is back to the way it should have been, and Bryan Singer successfully retconned this franchise.
Yes.
Everything, it was such an emotional, like, there's Colossus with Kitty Pryde, the way it should be. I mean, all these things, as if you've read the comic books and know how important that is to the comic book fans and the story in general. It was just beautifully done. That scene on the plane, one of the most emotional sequences.
Beautiful.
With Magneto really calling Professor X, Charles, out, like, you're hiding, you abandoned us. And it truly is like he's hiding doing these drugs so he could walk around, but it's like at the same time he's just sitting in his mansion like being a crybaby. It's like he needed to be pulled out. And the using Wolverine was a great strategy. I mean, not only is Hugh Jackman just one of the greatest actors around right now, but his personification of Wolverine. Sorry, dude, you can never quit. We were talking about that. You can never not be Wolverine. You've got to be Wolverine for the rest of at least our lives.
Yeah.
Please.
I've been saying for a long time, hey, you know what? We as movie fans, if Hugh Jackman wants to retire his Wolverine, his version of Wolverine, all we as fans can say is thank you for your 15 years of service.
Right.
We tip our caps to him and
15
say
more.
go and enjoy. Yeah, no, that's done. That is done. Sorry, you're not allowed anymore
Right.
to
You
ever stop
cannot
being
not be Wolverine.
Well, you
'cause you're
heard his
too
son's
awesome.
idea, right? He could not bring out the claws this next time and
Oh,
just
yeah,
garden.
Yeah, just hang out and have some sandwiches. So, yeah, I mean, the dramatic level that all of the actors are brought to, truly, Mystique is a great character, and you feel all of the pain that she's in, like deciding what to do, because she's pulled by both Charles and by Magneto. Trask, what a great villain, because you could he's not just, he isn't like a person, a two-dimensional villain. He's fully three-dimensional. You could see why he wants to use these mutants to bring all of humanity together. It's definitely the wrong way to do it, but every evil person has like some kind of misguided truth to them. So
that they think is the right.
they
thing.
think they're doing something
He
right.
Bolivar Trask wants world peace.
Yeah.
I mean, what's wrong with that?
And he admires the mutants in their way.
And casting Peter Dinklage, though they didn't mention his his dwarfism, it's like it did make it like a really interesting thing to have somebody who is like not a normal human being, like as far as like born like how everyone else is born, but take this thing against other people who are born different. It's a really weird,
Beautiful
subtle
contrast.
thing. Yeah. I could not believe how great, like we talked about that Quicksilver scene.
Oh.
I think I had a permagrin on my face for
yeah.
even the next 10 minutes after that was over. It's one of the most fantastic, not only special effects sequences,
Perfection.
but lighthearted. Like, if you had these powers, you would do what he did. You would mess with people. You would take every advantage. Like, oh, what? Break into the Pentagon? Now I'm excited. Yeah. What a great role. And, I feel like everything I thought about this movie was flipped on its head. I could not believe how well directed it was. The tone was so consistent and perfect for every single character throughout the entire film from beginning to end. I really, I am so hard pressed to find something negative about this film because everything about it was fantastic. Simon Kinberg did an incredible story, an incredible
so
script,
good.
weaving together both the present and the future.
And the past.
And I'm sorry, the past and the future. Yeah, as they continued forward into the second hour, they're crisscross cutting back and forth.
Yeah.
Future, past, ramifications of what's happening. Wolverine gets hurt. He cuts Kitty Pryde in the future.
Yeah.
All these things that are like so perfectly done or imagined in time travel that you never get to see realized.
Seamless.
You see that in this movie. It's an incredible time travel movie. It's not even, I wouldn't even call it a superhero film. It's just a great film that happens to have these amazing characters in it who can do incredible things.
Right.
So,
And Christian, we're going to go to you next. I want one other thing
He's
I should
exploding.
mention
I can feel it.
before I forget.
sorry, I'll chill out.
We all
One
in
of
the
the-
same way.
I'm excited listening to you guys get excited about it.
One of the other cool things it has done, and it was very subtle, and it wasn't until we walked out of the theater that I realized, you know what else they just did? In the snap of a finger, they corrected all the continuity problems that have developed over the course of the X-Men franchise that they had. With one plot maneuver, they fixed all the continuity errors are now gone.
Yep.
And I thought that was brilliant. I thought it
and
was
they
great.
acknowledged them too, because
Yes.
look into my mind and you saw Jean Grey get stabbed by Wolverine from The Last Stand. All these things that happened that we as fans were like, what? Not only did you ruin one of the greatest stories and throw it away, I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, now it's all back to normal.
It made it more emotional to see that too, for where we stepped.
Right. So anyway, Christian,
Do it,
you had a
Christian.
chance to see it.
That's
Your
all right.
thoughts?
No, I love that.
It's all right.
Hated it.
You mentioned the Quicksilver part, and I think that one of the most, a lot of people were talking about, are they going to acknowledge that he's Magneto's kid? They did.
Yep.
They kind of
Yeah,
did.
we did.
In a
That's
very subtle eye-winking kind of way.
so
Which
good.
was
And that
great.
scene in general was so cool because, again, I was one of the skeptics. When we showed the picture on
Totally.
Movie Talk, I said he looks like someone who got lost at Coachella. And he still does, but it works. It works for who he is now. Like, now that I know the character, I'm like, okay, I understand why he looks like that. I understand, like, that scene was incredible when you're watching him just fly through in the music that
So
they
perfect.
use and, like, everything. And the fact that, like, this guy is a maniac, but he's our kind of maniac. When is he coming back? And I agree.
Can I just jump in and say, I don't know karate, but I know crazy?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those and again, that just showed, like you said before, John, with the story, it was just so well written, like from beginning to end, the way that it was just pieced together. That's I love First Class. First Class is my favorite, then X2. And I thought that it was such a bridge between both those films in general, because I thought, for me, the reason First Class has such a special place in my heart is because it kind of brought X-Men back for me, because the other movies were such a mess and a nightmare. I'm like, oh man, people were not excited about that movie, and Vaughn got us excited, and you could feel Vaughn's stamp on the story on this as well, because he had a big part of the story as well too, and you could tell the team with him and Singer and how that worked. You guys mentioned Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique. I didn't even know Jennifer Lawrence was in this movie. I just saw Mystique. It was
Yeah.
the first time that I could really say, when a huge movie star of her caliber and McAvoy and everyone in this movie, I didn't see the actors. Not once. I always saw the character, and that's very hard to do.
That is hard.
Especially for what we all do. Like that, to be able to just say, and I was in this movie from the second it started to the second it ended. I was watching X-Men. I was watching the story, and at the end, when you see Jean Grey, I felt I was doing the same thing Singer was doing to Ratner. You know, like, the whole time, like when that was going on. But what it also did, though, for X3 and all those other movies too, is like Schnepp was just saying, it actually, as much as you say, oh, well, you just ruined it, it made it part of the timeline, because now that was ended, it's okay that it happened. Because you can go back and watch those movies, like, it doesn't matter. This is just part of the...
This gets reset.
Right. So all of that was really cool, too. But going back to Wolverine and Hugh Jackman, the thing I liked about him the most it was a different spin on Wolverine. He wasn't the angry Wolverine all the time. He didn't have to run around and be angry. And I love that Wolverine. It's nice to see him. Like one of my favorite scenes of all time is X2 when he goes berserker style in the kitchen. I love that moment. But you didn't need that. He was the one going, wait a minute, relax. Calm down, you know, like doing all that stuff. And he lost it a couple times when they get the brilliant call back to First Class when because he had his little cameo and then Professor X brings it back and all that, and the relationship between how basically Beast has been taking care of McAvoy and the loyalty there. And it ultimately is Mystique and Professor X's movie. It's their movie first and foremost when you really think about you can also say Magneto, you know, too, but for me it's those two characters because it's about their relationship that ultimately saves the movie at the end, literally. And John, if you want to take a shot at Spider-Man 3, they had 3 villains in this movie and it didn't crowd the movie because Magneto is a villain. He is a villain in the past.
He's the villain.
He is. He really is. And you know, even that was so brilliant. The cutting back and forth to Magneto the villain and then Magneto the hero at the end as he sacrifices himself with the Sentinels. And you're watching this, and like you said, he's such a complicated villain. It's not so black and white. So when you're watching all that, and then you have Peter Dinklage, who also not black and white, and all these people. You have these villains that really worked. That were complex. And I could talk about this movie until tomorrow.
One little thing that you just reminded me of, I just want to touch on, that the 3D in this film actually works.
Yeah, it enhanced it.
Like, there's multiple sequences. I'll just mention Magneto on the train, when those rails go past.
Man.
Like, there's so many sequences in this film that are seamlessly done, not saying, hey, look at me, I'm in your face, 3D, but actually use the 3D technology.
The glass breaking?
Yeah, so much, so many scenes. Like, it's worth seeing in 3D. And normally, I'm not a 3D fan. I just don't want to see a movie in 3D unless I'm forced to see it. I'm like, all right.
I want to just a quick thing about you were mentioning Jennifer Lawrence. I'm going to admit right now, I was not a big fan of Jennifer Lawrence's performance in First Class. To me, it was she felt like she didn't really have a strong grasp of who her character is. Mutant and proud.
Don't even talk about that part.
it never. But now you got into this
it.
film. It's like she studied Rebecca Romijn's Mystique a little bit. She brought in not just the physicality, but almost like the beginning stages of her. Disconnecting her emotions, which is then what you end up with a little bit later in the future with Rebecca Romijn, right? She did so good. Like, such a huge, vast improvement, I thought, over her performance in First Class. Just remarkable. Anyway, Chrissa Lee, your turn. You saw X-Men Days of Future Past yesterday. Your positives.
First positive is that Christian didn't make fun of me when I cried at the end. So that's my first positive. But honestly, you know, the X-Men movies weren't always my favorite movies. And it wasn't until First Class that I was really like, wow, this is really great. Because the first couple X-Men movies, they were so busy, they were so confusing with the continuity problems. As someone who didn't read the comic books, I was like, wait, I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. So to follow them became difficult, and I kind of gave up. Then First Class came out, which is my favorite X-Men movie until Days of Future Past comes here. Woo! And with everything that everyone said, I stopped watching trailers after I think the second one because I was starting to get so excited that I felt like it was going to be a Man of Steel for me, where I was so excited and so pumped up, and then I walked in and was like, oh. And I didn't want that to happen because I had been so excited with First Class. So I stopped watching trailers. I went in, I had heard Amy Rose, and I was like, please let this happen. And everything was perfect. The story never felt overwhelming. It never felt like there was too much going on. Going from, Christian and Mark and I had all laughed about the time traveling. Like, we were going to get lost. Like, how are we going to sit through this movie? Were we going to know what was going on? There was never a moment where you felt lost. You didn't know what was going on. And with every single character, they each had their moment. Whether it was a 5-minute moment or a 30-second moment, every single character was shown respect, was shown love. And as a viewer, you fell in love with them and you wanted more. I'm so glad that all of you talked about Jennifer Lawrence, because I remember recently on the show, somebody had posed the question to us, who was the better Mystique, Rebecca Romijn or Jennifer Lawrence? And a lot of you had said, oh, well, in First Class, Jennifer Lawrence. And I thought she was perfect in First Class because she was just learning and she didn't know who she was yet. And she didn't have that point where she had become bad yet. And for me, she was perfect there. And then to see her in Days of Future Past and really become that kind of sexy, badass that Rebecca Romijn was really interesting to see her change as an actress. James McAvoy to me in this film was like beyond words. I get goosebumps just talking about him, because to see him be so tortured and to see that back and forth between him and Magneto was the plane was my favorite, I think, scene. And Quicksilver, we all made fun of him.
Yeah.
Every single one of us made fun of that picture and was like, what are they doing?
Well,
and
he looked ridiculous.
Yeah,
We're like,
Especially
read
out of
it, he's going to
context.
do it
Out of
better.
context, he looked just
so bad.
ridiculous.
He looked so bad. And the moment he comes on the screen, you're like, oh, now I get it. Yeah. There wasn't, the last Bryan Singer film that I truly loved was Usual Suspects. I mean, it goes that far back for me. So
That's pretty far back,
that's
girl.
pretty far back. That's something that I truly, really loved. And this, to me, I agree with Schnepp, was by far better than Captain America 2, which to me was one of my favorites. This, I mean, it just goes past it 100 times for me. And I think it is close to becoming one of my favorite superhero films, because it didn't feel like a superhero film. It felt like I was watching people that I cared about. It was great action. It was emotional. It was heroic. It was seeing both sides of trying to do the same thing, but one takes the great way and one takes the bad way. I mean, we see that every day in life. So to me, it was so much more of a real life superhero film that I did. I laughed. I oohed. I awed. I was waiting for him to elbow me the entire screening because I was making noises.
I was doing it with you.
And then I cried. I did. I can't remember I don't think I've ever cried at a superhero film. And I cried at the end of this film. Like, I was trying to wipe the tears so that all the other press people wouldn't make fun of me. It was one of my favorite superhero films to date.
You know what? It's one of the things I think I lost sight of too, watching it the first time through, but not until reflecting later. This is a great sci-fi film.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It is. It feels a little
everything.
Kubrick-ish to me,
Yeah.
actually, in some ways. Like the sci-fi aspect of this film, so well done. Let me ask you guys this question, because I got one more big positive thing I want to talk about. Let me ask you this. The story of this movie and the screenplay. What does this do for your anticipation or lack thereof of the new Fantastic Four? How does this change your perceptions of the new Fantastic Four, knowing this is the same guy who just wrote the script for Fantastic Four? I mean, does this, because I'll tell you what, for me, I've always known, hey, I trust Kinberg. I trust him. And I've been optimistic, but a little bit forcibly so, for the new Fantastic Four. Hey, they got a great script. I like the director. I like the screenwriter. Wait a minute, the guy who just wrote this,
Look at his
is
resume,
the guy who's
though.
writing Fantastic Four?
Yeah.
Does it change your perception of the Fantastic Four at all?
I mean, I think that for me, any movie that was coming after the Tim Story versions were going to be better.
Yeah.
So my perceptions were always that it's going to be better than what we had.
I can tell you, I ate some bad burritos last night, and I had an episode in the bathroom, and then I looked in the toilet, and there was a better script than Tim Story's Fantastic Four. I just
Oh,
mentioned
is that necessary?
Well,
just want to get vivid.
It's the analogy that fits perfectly.
Thanks for that story.
But that's the thing, is that, yeah, so I don't think it has changed my perception, because, again, I knew the team, and I already think that we're going to have a much better version, but it's certainly encouraging that this is the last thing he worked on in a town that we are, what have you done for me lately, something pretty special.
Yeah.
I'm still cautiously optimistic, but I mean, his resume before this is spectacular. So this is just like, I still got it, and then times 20. So I mean, I'm still cautiously optimistic. I think that's the best way to phrase it.
As someone
for me.
who's never been able to actually finish either of the Fantastic Four movies because I turned them off with disgust, I'm really looking forward to this new version of the Fantastic Four. I do believe Josh Trank is taking a great visual
Love
turn
Trank.
on it. I'm optimistically cautious because simply, even though it's Fantastic Four's screenplay has gone through a lot of different writers and ghost writers,
a lot.
Simon Kinberg, even though with all the talent that screenwriters have, ultimately, if a producer's like, nah, I want this scene to, it could still be, messed with. I don't think they're going to go comedy style, definitely, especially not Tim Story style, but I have a lot more confidence in it. I agree with you after this X-Men.
All right, so big
I
thing.
actually wasn't nervous about Fantastic Four.
Oh yeah, you've
I wasn't.
never
I was.
been. Yeah.
I haven't been nervous because the last ones were so not so great. And as soon
Set
as
the
they
bar
started
low.
giving, as soon as they started giving us the cast, to me, as soon as Michael B. Jordan signed on, as soon as they started giving me the cast, I started to have more faith in it because I feel like all of the people they've chosen have made such great choices in their careers in
talented,
the past
yeah.
couple years that I think that they're not stupid. This just made me more excited because the story was so good for this.
All right. Well, now let me get to this. The other big positive about this film, in my opinion, and this will be different for everybody. the best after credit scene, my favorite after credit scene I've ever seen. And the sad part is about 95% of the movie-going audience that sticks around for the end credits will probably not understand what it is they're saying.
Everyone asked me in the movie. They're like, "Who was that?
What was that?"
I was like,
School 'em.
But the lights, so you got the black screen after the last credit rolls, and then the screen starts to brighten, and you see it's desert. And as soon as it did, Dennis was sitting right beside me. I'm like, "En Sabanur!" Like I'm like elbowing him in the corner, and then you hear the throngs of the ancient Egyptian slaves behind you. Hear En Sabanur, En Sabanur. I'm like, oh, and then you see the back, and like at first, because I can hear some guy behind me. That's too skinny to be Apocalypse. You don't know the history of Apocalypse because that looks exactly like he should at that period of time. And the camera pans around, and not only do you see the perfect skin tone, it's Apocalypse, but then you see in the background his 4 horsemen standing in the back, and I wanted to urinate in my pants. I was so excited because everybody knows how I've been dying to see Apocalypse.
the little boy has been
I'm
unleashed.
switching couches. I'm switching couches immediately.
Let's get Chrisley around.
I was losing my mind, and all I could do to not make a fool of myself in the theater is just grab onto the arms of my seat and try to keep myself still.
We need to start bringing pee pads with you.
Oh my gosh!
We'll put 'em
it
in
was
Depends.
so exciting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone on and on about this. Let's start talking about the negatives.
Wait,
of
before we do negative, I got one
I
more,
can't.
a couple more positives. guys.
Okay, a couple more
The
positives.
Sentinels, we talked about it a little
They were
bit. Like
great.
the older, in the past Sentinels, the way they look, just from the publicity stills and even the trailers, was like, I haven't seen a move yet. They look like a vacuum cleaner. Then the future ones looked kind of like a Terminator-y type of a rip-off type thing. But then you see the movie and you realize, oh my God, everything makes sense.
Perfect.
Why are they scaly? Because they're from Mystique. They're from
Yes.
and then
They're adaptive.
They're
it's
adaptive,
it's
yeah.
such a perfect way to take the Sentinels and move them even more horrifically into the future, and
Yeah.
they are the scary
Yeah.
creatures to have to fight.
And the
Because
way they transform into the individual power
Yeah.
right there for the mutant they're fighting
that's
is brilliant.
sorry, I just wanted to,
No,
another
that's
positive.
No.
I was gonna,
Let's
I
keep
wanted to
talking
say before the fact that this is not only a great X movie; it's the best Terminator movie we've gotten in a long time.
Yeah, right?
But I say that
Whoa,
totally.
don't my T2 still wins.
But
okay.
I'm saying in a long time, and
Yeah.
I'm saying that, and I say that seriously because of what made Terminator 2 and 1 so cool was this could happen, as far as when you're feeling it, you're watching it, and the fact that you have in the very beginning, it was very Terminator-esque with the skulls, as
Totally.
Yeah.
this bleak future, and it just brought back that total, like what you said before. This was a great sci-fi film.
It really was.
and so that's why the Terminator reference I totally
Even
get.
that there was a kid in the future when they were like walking along. One guy had that weird eye scar,
Yeah,
but he
yeah.
was
Yeah,
an
with the
old man.
yeah.
And then you see him as a middle-aged person. Then he's in class, but he's younger. So it was
Yeah.
like they touched on that. And then there was a kid who was kind of like found a dead X-Men body.
Yeah.
And then he's one of the first kid that Wolverine sees come out the door
Right.
as a younger
Yeah.
The
version. It was
details
like some
of
of
it.
these
All the
little
so
details.
much
That's right, and you'll pick up stuff if you watch it again.
I
too.
just saw it again last
And you
night,
picked
and
it
I was
up,
just
right?
like,
Yeah.
and there are things like that, and I loved it just as much,
Did
which
we mention
means
the
something.
Sorry, did we mention the comedy? Like as far as like how it's like
Amazing.
how night
Perfectly
it,
peppered
Yes.
in
It had
humor at
everything.
all the right moments.
Do we
'Cause
really have to go to
just,
negatives?
But I mean, just when things start
hard.
to get really heavy, Bryan Singer in this X-Men universe is the best chef in the kitchen because he knows, okay, now we need to sprinkle in some humor to keep the tone right.
Right.
Now we can get darker. Now it's time for more humor. Now it's time for a stunning visual effect. Now it's time to see
Yeah.
Mystique kick somebody in the throat. Now
Yeah.
it's time to pop Wolverine's claws. It was just all, and the humor was a big part of that all at the right time.
the Jackman Beast moment when he walks up to the door.
Come
so
on.
They're gonna
on.
be buddies soon.
Yeah.
Punches him in the face.
You're
it's-
strong for like, come on, Beastie. Like, what?
Yeah.
Go,
So
when are you going to
good.
turn into the beast? Turn into the beast.
And
you
the
know?
Wolverine Striker stuff was brilliant also because again, obviously, what happens is he still gets the adamantium put in him. But it's like everything with the claws, going back into the humorous. Normally in every movie we see, it's always going through the metal detectors and they go off. And when he
like,
goes
"What?"
through this time,
Looks
and, it's
so
like, and he's so
good.
excited that it doesn't happen. But it's a burden to him. You see that these bone claws because this Wolverine that woke up after the amnesia and everything was used to the metal claws. So when the adamantium, so when he's fighting with the bone, it's him getting used to it. It was all subtle stuff that really these actors know the characters and Singer knows the story so well.
And the chess game after on the plane with that really emotional moment, and then literally this could be a 3-hour review.
And one of the things that I really like too, because everybody knows Magneto is actually, I think Magneto is my all-time favorite comic book character because of the complexity and everything
Not
to it.
even close.
And I love the fact that even though, make no mistake, Wolverine is the badass of the cinematic universe, he is nothing compared to Magneto. When Wolverine tries to go one-on-one with Magneto, it will not end well for Wolverine.
No.
Every time.
With or without
Survivors.
adamantium.
Right.
But what was interesting, we talked about this. What they don't explain is, because at the end of the last Wolverine film, once again, he doesn't have his adamantium claws anymore. But in the future, he's got his adamantium back. They never explain how he gets that adamantium back.
The Wolverine movie, and I'm glad you brought that up now. The Wolverine movie is the only thing that doesn't really fit continuity with this film, because even in the post-credit scene of the Wolverine, it doesn't make any sense. It's cool. But if you look at the timeline, it's they approach him, in the airport, and he sees all this stuff on the TVs. But it's like he obviously, like, that has nothing to do with what happens in the movie we saw last night. It was literally just to say, hey, get excited because
it worked.
coming. Yeah, it worked.
And
it
how
totally
cool
worked.
was that scene when right near the beginning of the film, the X-Men jet comes flying in, lands in the China. I think they're in the mountains of China at any rate. They land there, the ramp comes down, and out walks Professor Charles Xavier, Magneto, Storm, and Wolverine, and you're like, I almost swore.
Yeah.
Crap is about to hit the fan.
And lighting up his cigar. We know him.
Well, we saw it with the press. I think when you see it with a giant normal audience, people are going to cheer. Because nobody cheered.
We cheered.
Still, even though it was a bunch of cold-hearted press people watching it, you could still feel the excitement in the auditorium that we saw it in. But you're right. I think people are going to go bananas. Now, we have got to get to some negatives here because
one more positive.
One more positive.
So, like I was touching on some of the action choreography in this film. I can't really. I mean, aside from the fight scenes with the Winter Soldier and Captain America, but this film had so many more. Just
they raised the bar.
Because you're not only are you emotionally vested with all the different characters, that makes all of the action so much more important.
The stakes are higher.
The stakes are
and
higher.
there were
and
different
you feel
kinds of action scenes because you had your Jennifer Lawrence Mystique, just like this is a badass fighter
loose,
scene, action scenes, and then you had the mutants fighting the Sentinels scenes with grand special
and
effects.
Blink and the portal.
Oh,
Yeah.
Blink.
Blink, what a
Portal
great
stuff was
character!
amazing.
And then,
Portal stuff was
I mean,
amazing.
basically
She was
some of those
beautiful.
characters, those brand new characters, had 1 or 2 lines, but you felt for them.
Yeah.
Like when they're fighting
And that's
Bishop.
hard
Bishop
to do.
again.
Bishop
again.
was.
Bishop.
I was so happy to
Yeah.
see they properly treated Bishop. He wasn't a big role in the film,
But
but they
he
made an
treated him
impact.
exactly
He was
right.
important.
I believe that Michael Fassbender has powers. For watching this movie,
Yeah,
he's just
me too.
flipping
he does. Have you
cars.
seen Shame?
The thing is too, like even when these mutants are dying off in the future, like when Storm dies, even as a moviegoer, something's going to happen and she's going to be okay later on. But as you're watching it, though, even though you're watching, you're still like your heart's breaking for
Feels
her.
like you get punched in the gut.
It's crazy
Oh my
because
gosh.
you've been with Storm for so long, and even if
Yeah.
you didn't love her accent in the first movie, it didn't matter because she was there.
Or
and
her
she was,
haircut.
They all banded together.
Or
And,
her frying frogs line.
Yeah.
oh, man.
Ay.
Don't even bring that back.
And
around.
it didn't really bother me that much that Toad was replaced by. It wasn't Parks. It was a different actor.
I didn't mind.
And it was
I
a
mean,
different kind of Toad.
It was
too.
a different-
very
yeah.
different. Yeah.
It was-
But you know what they never said? They never once said his name is Toad. And
Right.
you know what else? Maximoff. They never once in this movie said Quicksilver.
You're right.
That's
They
true.
never said Quicksilver. To the uninitiated comic book person just watching this movie, that kid's name is Maximoff.
Yeah,
And
Peter
that's it.
Maximoff. That's it.
Right.
Kitty Pryde. Ellen did a
So
great
good.
job.
They
She was
all did
great.
so
Great
good.
job. Okay.
Hey, we got to talk about some negatives, people.
I pass.
I'll
I
you
pass.
know what? We brought up Toad, the fact that they made him a short order cook. That's all I got. That's all I got.
Yeah.
So I was watching at one point. Watching him, was like, who'd hire that guy? But as a
I'm
cook.
trying to
But-
be critical, but honestly, it floored me, and my
Yeah.
expectations were through the roof. I'm like, oh god, here we go, and literally, it was even surpassed those.
If one thing to quote my buddy Mark Ellis, who said the second half of the movie for him didn't hold up as much as the first half. He said he loved the second half still, but the first one was you're just so into it, and the second half had a little trouble following it. Maybe that the first one you were just so ready for it, and it was delivering at such a punch that once after that Quicksilver line hit. But I mean,
You're
we're
grasping
I
at
disagree
straws.
with Mark Ellis. Mark Ellis is wrong.
Yeah, grasping
You're
at straws.
grasping
You're
at
grasping at straws. I mean, that's literally quoting
like,
other
let's find a
people to
negative.
find negatives. Yeah.
I got a negative.
Whoa.
I think they could have got a better Richard Nixon.
Oh, yes. I agree there.
It wasn't. It was almost a little comical to me.
He just didn't look great.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
But Richard Nixon in general is comical, though. That's the problem.
I agree. Everyone kind of laughed when he came on.
Yeah.
You know what?
agree
I
with
like
that.
this Richard Nixon better than in The Watchmen Richard Nixon because that makeup
I
looked
agree.
so
Oh,
fake.
yeah.
I was like, I'm cool with this Richard
Do you-
Nixon.
Here's
He
one.
did
Here's
offend
one that I guess was kind of posed. Do you think that Dinklage had a strong enough motivation to want to hunt down the mutants? Was that explained enough?
To me,
it
world
worked
peace.
Yeah.
in a
He
good way.
thought he
Unite
was
humanity.
saving the world.
I'm trying here, guys. I'm
Yeah, no, but no, I
The only-
agree. Yeah.
The only negative that I have is I wanted more Quicksilver. And I didn't think that I would ever say those words,
Yeah,
but I really did. I wanted him to kind
You're
of
getting
go
him in
along.
Apocalypse.
I wanted him
Yeah,
to
he'll
get
be
on
back.
that plane with them.
Right,
I wanted
they're
him
leaving
to go
him
on
off
the
that
trip
plane.
and just help them. That's
Well,
my only negative.
You
with
know
the
who's going to
film.
want to go on a trip is Aaron Taylor Johnson to try to follow this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Ouch.
Yeah,
Good
like
luck.
Especially after
especially-
Godzilla.
Look, I liked Aaron Taylor Johnson in Godzilla.
I thought he was flat.
I was the only one who liked Aaron Taylor Johnson in Godzilla.
like
Yeah.
him in
When we
Kick-Ass.
watch the next Avengers now, we're going to be comparing him
Yep. Yeah.
fairly or unfairly to Evan Peters, and I don't think he's going
Because
to
we
measure
did the
up.
opposite with the picture. We're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, Joss Whedon will get it right. Well,
that's
Well,
Yeah.
And like, though they didn't call Scarlet Witch out in this movie, at the very end, he's sitting with a little red-haired
Exactly.
girl.
Yeah.
So I'm
His
like,
little sister,
maybe
yeah.
that's supposed to be her.
Exactly.
Oh, here's a negative. It took
Even
a
though they're
really
twins.
long time during the credits to get to
the
that
end credits.
apocalypse sequence. I remember I was like, man, these credits are just a little bit too long. That's pissing me off.
and
the
we all
music.
agree there's not much. The music was amazing.
Again,
So
they brought back the X-Men theme in the beginning, and I think they combined a little bit to Henry
but
Jackson's
also
score.
with the Cerebro door, the movie opened
Yes.
with the Cerebro
Yes.
door. Cling,
Yeah.
I mean,
Wait,
just felt so good.
Here's a
Goes
negative.
back and talks to Professor X. Are you kidding me? That scene?
That's
All
not
right,
negative.
wait, negatives.
No, there's no negatives.
This is a really big negative. This movie makes me want to watch the other one, so that's going to take up my time
Right.
that I need
It
to
does
use on
make you
different
wanna go
things.
back.
Yeah.
So I actually do want to see the first and the second and
Let
even
me
the
ask
third.
this question: is there anybody in this panel right now that this is not, in your opinion, the best X-Men film we've ever had?
No.
No.
So tough. I have such a thing for First Class
I loved
for
it
me,
too.
but as far as a movie, as far as made, this is the best made film X-Men history.
And because they work so well together, too.
Yeah,
I
they
think
really
is-
do.
I think is the hard thing. It's like this movie was absolutely amazing. First Class is what got me excited to see it.
Yes.
Maybe if I didn't see First Class, I wouldn't have been as excited. I wouldn't be sitting here because I would have waited to see it with the regular audience.
Right.
But
With those
I mean, without the
regulars.
first, I don't know that I would appreciate and love the second as much. But I mean, it's amazing. You
All
can't-
right. Well,
Score time.
we've been. Yeah, I think it's scored. Hey, Dennis, how long have we been going already?
Close to an hour.
We're this hour.
And Dennis really liked it too.
Yeah,
Dennis
Dennis.
loved it, and it's we really wanted to have Dennis on this panel, but he's got
Dennis,
He's the
you should
production
jump over
manager.
here and
Now
say
I
I'm
get-
something.
going to ask him this in a second
Okay.
because I'm going to ask him for a score too. But it's time to go down the panel. So just a quick summary of your thoughts on the film and a score out of 10. Schnepp, we're going to go with you.
I got to rock it with a 10. This is, like I said, my favorite superhero movie of the year. It's probably my top 5 of all-time superhero films ever made. Also, like you mentioned, science fiction. This is an all-around incredible film from top to bottom, from script to cast to direction. I literally was emotionally overwhelmed after that film was when the credits were rolling. I was like, I can't believe what an incredible film this was to see in the theater. It's just such an amazing experience, and it ran the gamut for me for all emotions, especially having been such an X-Men fan in my childhood, reading all about with all the characters that are represented in this film so amazingly well. I can't give it anything less than a 10. I really literally cannot wait to see it again and re-experience it multiple times. And I wasn't joking. It makes me want to go back and see all of the other X-Men films, just because this one just did little touches. No moment was wasted. Like you guys were saying, even just the visual flashes when Wolverine is freaking out because that's the younger Stryker and you see the evil older Stryker. He freaks out, which makes him freak out in the future, and he cuts Kitty Pryde, and she's trying to say, all this mad stuff is happening. Magneto's trying to throw a bullet at Mystique. She's jumping out of a window. I mean, the emotional impact of this film when you see it, I can't even talk normally. So I'm gonna get reserved again and say 10.
Amy Rose.
10. This is my first 10 I've ever given to a spoilers. I think I gave Cap 9.5. And I'm going to tell you why, because people keep asking us, like, which movie do you like better? And I loved Captain America, right? I saw it 3 times in theater. I thought it was no question the best Marvel proper film to date. But they still had moments in it, like the close calls, like the 1 second left, saving the world and stuff like that. That kind of stuff does bother me. Not enough to make it anything less than 9.5. But there was not even a moment like that in this film where I was like, oh, you got cheesy. Oh, I'll forgive you because I love the rest of it so much. So it was perfection. Literally, like the entire spectrum of emotions. My expectations were so high, and it surpassed that. That never happens. And seriously, the character moments, the visual effects, the story was flawless. The way it literally was so many different genres put in one, and that is so much talent on the screen. And Singer, like, I'm just glad they gave this back to him, because you can tell he really wanted to do everything that Ratner didn't let him do with the third. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 10. It floored me. You now understand why I was in New York alone, not being able to talk to anyone about it, staying up till 6 o'clock in the morning, like freaking out, trying to write my questions for the junket because it was so amazing. So well job, team, and thank you for this masterpiece.
Christian?
10. I give it a 10, and it's a perfect blend between everything I loved in First Class and everything I loved in X2. It was the perfect marriage between Vaughn style and Singer style, and Singer brought X-Men to us. He gave it back to us in the purest form in this film. It's everything I remember loving about X-Men as a kid, reading the comics. Everything I wanted to see. It didn't stay. One character wasn't one. It wasn't a one-dimensional character. Everybody did everything I needed them to do in their character. Everyone had arcs, and it just was one of these movies that I will continue to watch over and over again and wait for the next installment. So Fox is lucky that they never gave this franchise up, because right now they're standing high.
Looking foxy.
Yeah.
Crystal Lee?
I have to go with 10 as well. First Class, I've watched a million times because it is my favorite X-Men film, which got me so excited for this. Before all of us had saw this movie, I think we could have written a book of things that could have gone wrong.
Oh, yeah.
That would have went wrong, that we would say, oh my God, all the time travel, all the characters, it was so much to think about. And then when you watch it, the way that it seamlessly comes together and makes sense, whether it's what music they pick or whether it's the way the camera angle. I mean, literally, the film is flawless. Other than I would have liked a little more Quicksilver. I couldn't find anything wrong with this film, and as a whole, it's not just a superhero film. Like, it's a really great film, and I can't tell you, like, run to get your tickets. Don't walk, because you don't want to hear about it from somebody else. You want to experience it, because that, to me, the first time you experience the movie is the best, and then every time you go back and watch it to find those little nuggets that you missed the first time. This is a movie that gets me so excited for the franchise, the way Avengers did for Marvel. I wanted to see more Iron Man. I wanted to see more. This gets me excited for the future of X-Men, and no other movie's done that before.
Can I add one little thing before you wrap it up? It's not a negative, but like when you mentioned all these different characters, one thing I thought about was Magneto, and how they made this big hubbub about, like, well, they had to cut the scene with Rogue breaking him out of prison. And then it was like, oh, because it's a double beat. And now when you see the film, you realize, oh, because it's a double beat, because they have to break the younger Magneto out of prison.
Right.
So it makes sense that they cut it out. But like Ian McKellen's role as Magneto, being the seeing the future version of Charles and him as friends, really added so much more. So much more.
Oh,
that
yeah.
we didn't mention Ian McKellen that much, but to see them being pals in the future made it so much more emotional when you see how angry they were with each other, and they had to resolve that. That's something that you realize that has to get resolved, because if both of them are enemies, that's going to ruin the future with Mystique and everything. So anyway,
Wait, I thought that was a negative. That
No.
seemed pretty positive.
Sorry. No. The
Ultimately-
negative was like my negative was like I can't wait to see that scene of Magneto getting
right.
busted out on the DVD.
But ultimately, in the past, they couldn't be brought back together. Ultimately, they tried because they love each other. Deep down, these two characters love each other. But the
Yeah.
ideological differences are so great at that period of time,
Right.
it couldn't happen. And I love that they stayed true to that.
Yep.
All right, my turn. Even in my top 10 films of all time list, for me, only 5 of them have I given 10s. I've only given 6 10s in my life. So I'm not giving a 10 to this film. Because to me, giving a 10 is not just that I can't find any problems with it. That's also to me saying, I couldn't find anything that they even could have done a little bit better. And to me, I think the action, the action was amazing. Could have been a little bit better. Could have been better, but it's not a weak. It's amazing. Was the humor awesome? Yes. Could have been a little bit funnier. I'm going to go with the 9.5. And I love this film, but I will say this. And I can't remember the last time if I have ever said this for a comic book film in my life. And once again, I only saw the film last night, so I'm not prepared to make definitive statements about favorite comic book movie of all time or second favorite comic book movie. Do I like it more than Captain America 2? Not ready to make those kind of statements yet, but I will say this. I'm going to be appalled if this film is not nominated for Best Picture by the time the Oscars come around. I will be appalled. This is the first comic book film I have ever said that for. This film, its strength does not lie in its boom, explosions, special effects. That's not where the heart or the strength of this film lies. It lies in the incredible screenplay, in the incredible story, and the way it was executed. I'm going to tell you right now, this film deserves to be, we got to see a lot of films still between now and the end of the year. But in an era where you can have up to 10 pictures nominated for Best Picture, this film deserves to be nominated for Best Picture. And I'm just floored by it. So for me, I think the highest score I've ever given on spoilers, which is a 9.5. I just love this film. I immediately this morning, only tickets I don't get for free are the damn AMC Prime Theater. Those are the only tickets I don't get free. And the first thing I did when I woke up this morning, I hopped online and bought 6 tickets to go see this movie again tomorrow night when it opens. That's how much I love this film. So I'm super excited about it. Dennis!
Yes.
Out of 10, what do you give X-Men Days of Future Past?
9.5.
Dennis says 9.5. Want to make sure we got. So the lowest score out of 6 of us is 9.5. If you're one of the people who watched this spoilers review against my advisement and you hadn't seen the film yet, go see it.
Shame on
Run.
you.
Yeah.
Go see it.
I think it'd be impossible if they stuck through the whole thing and don't want to see it now.
Yeah, I mean, I am. Blah, blah, blah. I'm
Over
I'm
an hour
floored.
with
Yeah.
us geeking out about
Yeah,
this.
this is so. Anyway, guys, that will wrap it up for us. Please, in the comments section, let us know your thoughts. What are some things that maybe you thought were weaknesses that we overlooked? What are some great things that over an hour? I don't know what we could have missed with the positive, but what are some of the positives we missed? Just leave us your feedback in the comments section below. So, anyway, for John Schnepp, Amy Rose Eisenbach, Christian Harloff, Chris Lee Kennedy, and of course, over there behind the controls, our production manager, Mr. Dennis Zen. My name is John Campia for AMC Spoilers. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. Don't forget, head on over to www.amctheaters.com to buy your second, third, and fourth screenings of X-Men Days of Future Past. Lots of great films playing at AMC Theaters other than that one as well, so go get your tickets there. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. My name is John Campia for AMC Movie News, and until next time, bye-bye.
Hey, everyone.